The neon glow of a jukebox hums in the background, and the sticky air of 1950s Florida wraps around you like a warm, reckless summer night. Porky's, the 1981 and raunchy teen comedy, burst onto screens with a crude grin and a rebellious spirit, becoming a cultural juggernaut that shaped the genre. Beneath its surface of locker room pranks and swamp-soaked revenge lies a treasure trove of bizarre stories and hidden truths. Let's peel back the curtain on 20 weird facts about Porky's that you didn't know, diving deep into the chaos and charm of this unlikely classic. Number 1. A tax shelter turned blockbuster. In the hazy world of 1970s Hollywood, Porky's wasn't born from a grand artistic vision, but from a financial loophole. The film was initially greenlit as a tax shelter, a low-risk investment for Canadian backers looking to offset taxes through film production. Director Bob Clark, fresh off horror hits like Black Christmas, teamed up with Astral Bellevue Pathé, a Canadian firm, to secure funding. The deal required shooting in Canada to maximize tax benefits, despite the story's distinctly Floridian setting. This led to most of the film being shot in Ontario, with Miami and Miami Beach standing in for key scenes. What's wilder? Every major Hollywood studio rejected the script, deeming it too crude or risky. Yet this scrappy tax dodge became a global phenomenon, grossing over $130 million worldwide against a $4 million budget. It held the title of Canada's highest-grossing film for decades, proving that sometimes the most unlikely bets pay off big. The irony is thick. A movie about teenage rebellion was itself a rebellious underdog, defying Hollywood's gatekeepers to become a box office king. Number 2. Kim Cattrall's career panic. Kim Cattrall, later iconic as Samantha Jones in Sex and the City, was a rising star when she took the role of Honey Honeywell in Porky's. But the decision wasn't easy. Cattrall accepted the part out of financial desperation, needing the paycheck to keep her career afloat. When she saw her name plastered at the top of the movie's poster, she was horrified, fearing the raunchy comedy would tank her budding reputation. Her character, nicknamed Lassie for howling during a steamy scene, was a far cry from the sophisticated role she hoped for. Yet the film's massive success didn't derail her, it amplified her visibility. The howling scene, shot in one take, became one of the movie's most infamous moments, with Cattrall leaning into the absurdity with fearless commitment. She later reflected that the role taught her to embrace bold choices, a lesson that shaped her later career. It's a strange twist. A role she dreaded became a stepping stone to stardom, proving that sometimes a risky leap can land you in the spotlight. Number 3. Inspired by real teenage antic. Bob Clark didn't just dream up Porky's, he lived it. The film's wild plot draws directly from Clark's teenage years in 1950s Florida, where he and his buddies got into real-life mischief at places like Boca Ciega High School and Fort Lauderdale High School. The titular Porky's was inspired by a real joint called Porky's Hideway in Oakland Park, Florida, a seedy spot known for its rough clientele. Clark's stories of sneaking into strip clubs, pulling pranks, and dodging trouble with local toughs formed the backbone of the script. He carried these memories for over a decade before dictating the story to co-writer Roger Swaybill while recovering from mononucleosis in 1979. The authenticity of Clark's experiences gave Porky's its raw, unpolished energy, capturing the reckless spirit of youth. But it's the realness that's weird. Those outrageous scenes, like peeping through shower holes or sinking a bar into a swamp, weren't just Hollywood exaggerations. They were echoes of Clark's own rebellious past. Number 4. The shower scene's shocking improv. The infamous shower scene where the boys peep on girls through holes in the locker room wall is Porky's at its most notorious. But what makes it truly bizarre is how much of it was improvised. The scene, running from roughly 38:12 to 43:47, culminates in Pee-wee shouting at a larger girl to move so he can see better, only for Tommy to get caught literally by Coach Ballbricker, grabbing his exposed anatomy through the hole. The actors, fueled by the chaotic energy on set, ad-libbed much of the dialogue, including Pee-wee's outburst. The crew struggled to keep straight airways, and the take used in the final cut was reportedly the only one where they didn't break character. Even wilder, the scene was shot in a single day with minimal rehearsal to capture raw spontaneity. This unscripted madness became a cultural touchstone, inspiring countless teen comedies, but it also sparked controversy for its voyeuristic tone, making it a lightning rod for debates about the film's humor. Number 5. A Canadian film in disguise. Porkies screams 1950s Florida with its swampy Everglades and sun-soaked beaches, but most of it was shot in Ontario, Canada. Why tax incentives? The Canadian government offered generous tax breaks for films produced domestically, so Bob Clark set up shop in Toronto with exteriors filmed in Quebec to mimic Florida's humid vibe. Only a few scenes like the climactic bar destruction were shot in Miami to sell the setting. The cast and crew had to navigate freezing Canadian winters while pretending to sweat in the Florida heat, a surreal contrast that led to some creative filmmaking tricks like using space heaters to create visible sweat on actors. The Canadian connection runs deeper. Porky's held the record as the highest-grossing Canadian film in the USA and Canada for nearly 30 years, earning $111 million by 1999. It's a strange legacy and a quintessentially American story that owes its existence to Canadian tax laws and a director who knew how to play the system. Number 6. The Tallywhacker incident. One of Porky's most unforgettable moments is Coach Balbricker's obsessive quest to identify a peeping Tom by his ahem Tallywhacker. After catching Tommy in the shower scene, she demands a lineup to inspect the boys for a distinctive mole, leading to a hilarious showdown in the principal's office. What's weird? The scene was based on a real incident from Bob Clark's high school days, where a teacher threatened a similar stunt after catching boys spying. The actors' reactions, barely contained laughter, were genuine, as Nancy Parsons Balbricker went all in, delivering lines like "This prick" was last seen hanging around the girls' locker room with deadpan fury. The principal's struggle to keep a straight face was unscripted, as the cast couldn't handle Parsons' intensity. The term Tallywhacker became a pop culture catchphrase, and the scene's absurdity cemented Porky's as a comedy that pushed boundaries, blending crude humor with a strange kind of innocence. Number 7. Bob Clark's horror roots. Before Porky's, Bob Clark was a horror maestro, directing chilling films like Black Christmas 1974 and Dead of Night 1974. So how did he end up helming a raunchy teen comedy? Clark saw Porky's as a chance to channel his own youthful chaos into something lighter, but his horror background sneaks into the film's DNA. The swampy, ominous setting of Porky's bar feels like a slasher movie locale with its murky waters and menacing owner. Clark's knack for building tension shines in scenes like the boys' nighttime revenge plot, where shadows and suspense echo his horror roots. He later directed A Christmas Story 1983, proving his versatility, but Porky's was his pivot point, a weird blend of his gritty horror instincts and a nostalgic love for teenage hijinks. Tragically, Clark died in a car accident in 2007, but his ability to jump genres left a legacy that Porky's embodies in its bizarre, genre-defying glory. Number 8. Banned in Ireland. Porky's was a global hit, but not everyone was laughing. In Ireland, the film was banned on February 1, 1982, due to its explicit content and perceived moral offense. Censors cited the shower scene and crude humor as too scandalous for Irish audiences. The ban lasted just 19 days before being overturned, but the controversy only fueled the film's notoriety, drawing bigger crowds when it finally hit theaters. Irish censors weren't alone. Other countries debated its release, and critics like Roger Ebert slammed it for objectifying women. Yet the ban backfired, turning Porky's into a forbidden fruit that teens flocked to see. The irony: a movie about defying authority became a symbol of rebellion against censorship, proving that nothing boosts a film's appeal like a little controversy. It's a weird footnote in Porky's history. A comedy about teenage pranks sparked a grown-up culture war. Number 9. The Real Porky's Hideway. The titular bar in Porky's wasn't just a set, it was inspired by a real place. Porky's Hideway in Oakland Park, Florida was a notorious dive bar in the 1950s, known for its rough crowd and shady dealings. Bob Clark, who grew up nearby, wove the bar's gritty reputation into the film, turning it into the sleazy hub where the boys get swindled. The Real Porky's was less cartoonish, but just as wild, with rumors of backroom deals and occasional police raids. Clark exaggerated its vibe for laughs, adding trapdoors and swamp dumps. But the core idea, a place where teens chased forbidden thrills, came straight from his memories. The bar no longer exists, but its legend lives on through the film, a weird time capsule of a Florida that's long gone, replaced by strip malls and condos. Number 10. a cast of overage teens. Ever notice that the teenagers in Porkies look more like college grads at a reunion? That's because they were so. Most of the main actors like Dan Monahan, Pee-wee, and Mark Harrier Billy were in their mid-20s during filming, with some pushing 30. This wasn't unusual for teen comedies of the era, but it gives Porkies a weirdly mature vibe, like a frat party pretending to be a high school prank fest. The age gap made the characters' juvenile antics like obsessing over virginity or peeping feel even more absurd, as grown men played awkward teens with gusto. Bob Clark leaned into this casting, actors who could handle the physical comedy and crude dialogue without looking too polished. The result? A film that feels both nostalgic and oddly out of time, with kids who look ready for a mortgage but act like they're 16. Number 11. The racism commentary debate. Porkies is set in 1954, a time of deep racial tensions in America, and the film doesn't shy away from showing it. Characters like Brian the Jewish teen face anti-Semitic slurs, and the film's villains, including Porky and his sheriff brother, embody the era's bigotry. Bob Clark insisted the film was anti-racist, using humor to expose and mock prejudice, like when the boys unite against Porky's crew. But critics like Roger Ebert argued it didn't go far enough, calling the treatment of racism shallow and exploitative. The weird part, Clark based these dynamics on real encounters from his Florida youth, where he saw both camaraderie and ugly prejudice firsthand. The film walks a tightrope, using crude comedy to comment on serious issues, which makes it a strange artifact, both a product of its time and a critique of it, leaving audiences to debate whether it punches up or just panders. Number 12, the soundtrack that never was. For a film so rooted in 1950s nostalgia, Porky's has a surprisingly forgettable soundtrack. Unlike American Graffiti, which leaned heavily on period-specific rock and roll, Porky's uses a generic score with minimal licensed music. Why budget constraints? The film's $4 million budget went mostly to production and cast, leaving little for pricey song rights. Bob Clark wanted to evoke the era through dialogue and setting rather than a jukebox of hits, but this choice makes the film feel oddly quiet for a teen comedy. Some scenes, like the bar sequences, use diegetic music like a jukebox in the background, but there's no iconic needle drop moment. Fans on Reddit have noted this as a missed opportunity, with some wishing for Chuck Berry or Elvis to amp up the vibe. It's a weird quirk. A movie obsessed with 1950s youth culture skips one of the era's defining elements, leaving the soundscape as bare as Porky's swamp. Number 13. The swamp stunt that went wrong. The climactic scene where the boys sink Porky's bar into the swamp is pure cinematic chaos, but it almost sank the production too. The set, built on a lake in Ontario to mimic the Everglades, was tethered by ropes to keep it afloat. During filming, a stunt went awry when the ropes snapped earlier than planned, sending part of the set crashing into the water prematurely. The crew scrambled to salvage the shot, and the final cut uses the accident to enhance the scene's wild energy. Actors later recalled wading through freezing water, battling leeches, and dodging debris while pretending it was a balmy Florida night. The mishap added authenticity to the destruction, but cost days of reshoots and repairs. It's a weird testament to Porky's DIY spirit. Even when things went wrong, the chaos made the film better. Number 14, a precursor to American Pie. Porky's is often called the granddaddy of teen sex comedies, and its DNA is all over American Pie 1999. The obsession with losing virginity, the crude humor, the underdog teens versus authority figures, it all started here. Bob Clark's film set the template, blending raunch with heart, and its success, 130 million worldwide, proved there was a market for this brand of comedy. American Pie director Paul Weitz has cited Porky's as an influence, particularly for its mix of juvenile gags and coming-of-age themes. But here's the weird part. While American Pie feels polished and self-aware, Porky's is raw and unapologetic, almost like a punk rock version of the genre. Fans on Letterboxd note that Porky's feels like a spoof of 1950s innocence, using sex and pranks to poke at the era's squeaky clean image, making it both a pioneer and an outlier. Number 15, the sheriff's real-life counterpart. Porky's brother, the corrupt Sheriff Wallace, isn't just a cartoonish villain. He's based on real figures Bob Clark encountered in 1950s Florida. Clark recalled shady lawmen who protected local dives like Porky's Hideway, turning a blind eye to illegal dealings for a cut of the profits. The film's sheriff, played by Alex Karras, is a hulking, menacing figure who roughs up the boys and extorts their cash. Clark exaggerated the corruption for laughs, but the dynamic teens versus crooked authority came from his own run-ins with small-town cops. The weird twist, Karras, a former NFL star, ad-libbed some of his lines, drawing on his own tough guy persona to make the sheriff both terrifying and absurdly funny. It's a strange blend of reality and caricature, grounding Porky's in a gritty truth while letting the comedy run wild. Number 16. The re-release cash grab. After Porky's dominated the box office in 1982, earning $106 million in North America alone, distributors saw a chance to milk it further. In 1983, just before the sequel, Porky's to the Next Day hit theaters. The original was re-released, pulling in an extra $6 million. This wasn't just a victory lap, it was a calculated move to keep the hype alive. The re-release included new posters and trailers that leaned harder into the shower scene, and Tallywhacker gags, doubling down on the film's raunchy reputation. What's weird? The re-release worked, drawing younger audiences who'd missed the initial run, including kids as young as 8, as one Reddit user recalled being snuck into a screening by an older cousin. This cash grab cemented Porky's as a cultural phenomenon, but it also fueled critics' complaints that the film was pandering to the lowest common denominator. Number 17. The sequels that faded away. Porky's spawned 2 sequels, Porky's 2, The Next Day 1983, and Porky's Revenge 1985, but neither matched the original's magic. What's weird is how far they strayed. The second film drops Porky in his bar, entirely focusing on new antics like a prank war with a rival school. The third pivots to a heist plot with Pee-wee dreaming of naked graduation pranks. Both flopped critically and commercially, grossing a fraction of the original's haul. Bob Clark only directed the first sequel, leaving the third to a new team, which fans on Reddit blame for its disjointed vibe. The 2009 spin-off, Porky's Pimpin' Pee-wee, was a direct-to-DVD disaster barely tied to the original. The sequel's failure highlights a strange truth. Porky's worked because of its specific mix of 1950s nostalgia and raw humor, a formula that couldn't be replicated without losing its soul. Number 18. The feminist backlash. Porky's revels in its crude humor, but its portrayal of women, especially in scenes like the shower peeping or Honey Honeywell's howling, sparked fierce debate. Critics like Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert called it misogynistic, arguing it objectified women and treated them as punchlines. Bob Clark countered that the film mocked the boys' immaturity, not the women who often outsmart them, like the girls who trick the boys into a swamp. The weird part, the film's defenders, including some fans on Letterboxd, argue it's a satire of 1950s gender norms, showing women expressing sexuality on their terms. Yet the shower scene's voyeuristic glee and the lack of developed female characters fuel the criticism. Porky sits in a strange limbo, a product of its era that both challenges and indulges the male gaze, leaving modern viewers to wrestle with its contradictions. Number 19. The low-budget miracle. With a $4 million budget, Porky's was a shoestring operation compared to blockbusters like Raiders of the Lost Ark, $18 million from the same era. Yet it grossed over $130 million worldwide, a return that stunned Hollywood. The low budget forced Bob Clark to get creative, using unknown actors shooting in Canada for tax breaks, and building sets like Porky's bar on the cheap. The swamp scene with its collapsing bar was a logistical nightmare, relying on practical effects and a single take to save costs. The weird part, the film's raw, unpolished look became its strength, giving it an authentic, gritty feel that resonated with audiences. Fans on Reddit note that its low-budget charm makes it feel like a scrappy underdog, much like the boys in the story. Porky's proves that sometimes less money means more heart and more profit. Number 20, a cultural time capsule. Porky's isn't just a movie, it's a snapshot of 2 eras, the 1950s it depicts and the early 1980s when it was made. The 1950s setting with its jukeboxes, greased hair, and small-town vibe channels, a nostalgic myth of American youth. But the film's crude humor and boundary-pushing antics scream 1980s rebellion. It captured a moment when teen comedies were shedding the innocence of beach party films and embracing the raw edge of Animal House. Its influence echoes in American Pie, Superbad, and beyond, but its unpolished, in-your-face style feels unique to its time. The weird part, despite its controversies, bans feminist critiques, and accusations of bad taste, it's beloved by fans who see it as a guilty pleasure, a reminder of a time when movies could be messy, offensive, and still strike a chord. On Reddit, fans share stories of sneaking into theaters or laughing with parents proving Porky's is more than a film. Number 20, a cultural time capsule. As the credits roll and the jukebox fades, Porky stands as a wild, flawed, and strangely enduring relic, a film that dared to be shameless and became a legend in the process.